What was Donald Trump's biggest achievement when last in office?
Probably leaving.
It's your fucking nightmare.
With less than a week to go until the US 2024 presidential election, America faces a choice between a current vice president and former US senator, the former California Attorney General and top prosecutor, Democratic nominee Kamala Harris, and a former president turned felon, reality TV host and guy who licenses out his name on the side of buildings, who's been compared to the world's shittest professional trumpeter. You get a bit of a song and dance and a lot of unwanted noise, but he always leaves the room with a distinct smell of bullshit in the air. Donald J. Trump. These two voters from the most pro-Trump county in Georgia put it another way.
I have voted Republican, you know? Yeah, I vote for the man. I don't vote for their party.
So what are your thoughts on the election?
Ain't much to think about it.
Well, who are you going to vote for?
The right person.
Well, who do you think the right person
I'm
is?
going to be Donald Trump.
Okay, tell me why.
Last time you saw him talking, did you watch his lips? Were they moving? He's lying.
He told over 30,000 lies in his 4-year term. From building the wall, Biden and Obama both built more border wall than Trump did, to his non-existent replacement of the Affordable Care Act, claiming he did not know about the $130,000 payment to porn star Stormy Daniels, who wanted to sell her story of their affair in the lead up to the 2016 election. Trump's then attorney, Michael Cohen, paid Miss Daniels to kill the story. Cohen went to jail for this in 2019, and Trump knew because he had personally reimbursed Cohen via cheque he had personally signed, which ultimately helped provide the paper trail when in May this year he was found guilty on all 34 counts of falsifying business records for the same hush money payments, becoming the first former president in US history to be convicted of a felony. Trump is due to be sentenced on the 26th of November, but that's far from the only case hanging over him. On the 2nd of November, a federal judge in Washington DC released a 165-page filing in which the special counsel argues that Trump acted to overturn the election in the aftermath of Joe Biden's victory. Trump is set to face a trial next year, and on top of that, he has 3 other cases pending in Georgia, Arizona and Florida. Now, for a guy who's already the liar's liar, the majesty of mistruths, the Bill Gates of bullshit, the Neil Armstrong of narcissistic personality disorder, and his only chance at a pardon is if he returns to the White House. It's frankly impossible to believe a thing this guy says. Or in other words,
Last time you saw him talking, did you watch his lips? Were they moving? He's lying.
All right, well, so Mr. Wilson here was telling us that January 6th was a big disqualifier for him.
It should have been.
How do you feel about that?
I feel about it like he's anti-American. He's trying to overthrow our government.
So are you thinking about voting for Harris?
Yeah, have to or not vote.
He's the only choice other than Trump.
with November 5th now days away, the biggest concern facing Americans is undoubtedly what Trump and his team plan to do if they do take office. Fortunately, they put it all in writing. Of course, I'm talking about the infamous Project 2025. Titled Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. It's a comprehensive policy guide for the next Republican administration. Trump has tried to distance himself from the document. However, it was written by at least 140 of his former White House staff. It mentions his name 300 times. And during his last administration, the Heritage Foundation itself reported that the Trump White House had implemented almost 2/3 of its 2016 policy recommendations through executive orders. In his plan for a second term, and its chilling implications for millions of working Americans, he plans to eliminate the Affordable Care Act and provide no replacement policy, slash Medicare and Medicaid, leaving millions without health insurance, repealing the $35 a month cap on insulin, busting workers' rights, including cutting the pay of millions of working Americans, making overtime pay available to fewer workers, even though many throughout the country rely on overtime to feed their families. They'll dismantle the Department of Education, Homeland Security, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and slash veterans' hard-earned benefits, including measures to significantly reduce veterans' access to healthcare to cover only service-connected conditions, and pledges to enact a 50% reduction in federal employees within a year and a 75% reduction in 4 years, putting 1 million federal employees' jobs at risk, and with plans for Trump specifically to go after the Department of Justice and the FBI, up to 300,000 ex-servicemen and women's jobs are on the line, while he systematically destroys the autonomy of government, placing their leadership with MAGA yes men stooges. 170 of its proposals are modelled directly after Trump's previous policies or statements, reflecting their shared vision for centralising power around the president, at the expense of all other areas of government. This includes Schedule F, which is signed via executive order when last in office, and would classify many federal workers in policy-related roles as at-will employees, making it easier to dismiss experts who may disagree with the administration's agenda. So in other words, if there's an asteroid heading to Earth, Trump reenacting Schedule F is how we turn this movie into one about politicians ignoring the scientists. More recently, Trump released a separate manifesto called Agenda 47, which includes 2/3 of Project 2025, and most of it can be enacted by executive orders. The rest would need to be passed by the House, which is why keeping the House out of MAGA hands is as important as keeping Trump out of the White House. At the same time, Trump plans to extend this tax cut for the richest 1% of Americans, which the Senate Budget Committee found would add $4.6 trillion to the national debt. He plans on dismantling federal government departments and vital programs to fund a tax giveaway to the richest few at the expense of hundreds of millions of ordinary working people.
Describe Donald Trump in one word.
Orange.
Dangerous.
Wank.
Fucking wank. The king of wanks. The wank of the wanks.
Narcissist.
Fucking asshole.
Fucking asshole, yeah, man.
Babes, Donald Trump in one word. A fish.
Donald Trump in one word.
One word. Donald Trump in one word.
Racist.
Cut.
Trump's plan to extend his tax cut for the 1% of richest Americans and an expansion on tariffs form the core of his economic plan if he's to return to the White House. Needless to say, economists are not impressed. When it comes to his tariff-based economic plan, 16 Nobel Prize-winning economists say Trump's policies will fuel inflation. Furthermore, there are real concerns that the cost of the tariffs would be passed on to the consumer. Trump has claimed he will add tariffs of up to 20% on goods from other countries and 60% on all imports from China. However, the vital flaw in this policy is where the tariff or tax is paid. The charge would be footed by the US company importing the goods from abroad. So for example, a Chinese electronics manufacturer would not have to foot the 60% tax bill. It would be the US company importing the goods. And fears are that that extra cost would then be passed down the line to the consumer. It's this fact and the gang of experts saying it's a bad idea that saw Democratic nominee Kamala Harris dub the plan the Trump tax. On top of this, non-partisan researchers predict that if he successfully enacts his agenda, it will increase inflation. The Peterson Institute for International Economics predicted that Trump's policies, his import taxes, the deportations, and efforts to erode the Fed's independence would drive consumer prices sharply higher 2 years into his second term. Peterson's analysis concluded that inflation, which would otherwise register 1.9% in 2026, would instead jump to between 6 and 9.3% if Trump's economic proposals were adopted. The individual income tax breaks for America's richest 1%, as well as his plans to reduce the corporate tax rate from its current 21% to 15%, essentially is the old-fashioned idea of trickle-down economics, which also doesn't stack up to the evidence. Reagan and Bush slashed tax on higher earners, but inequality soared. Between 1979 and 2005, the incomes of the top 1% of earners tripled, while those on the bottom 20% rose by just 6%. It was more of a case of trickle up than trickle down. Moreover, Reagan's combination of tax cuts for the rich and a big increase in defence spending resulted in a threefold increase in federal government debt between 1981 and 1989. Trump has an even worse debt record. Fueled by the 1% tax cut he ran up, almost $7.8 trillion of additional debt during his 4 years in office. That's nearly twice as much as what Americans owe on student loans, car loans, credit cards, and every other type of debt other than mortgages. It amounts to about $23,500 in new federal debt for every person in the country. The growth in the annual deficit under Trump ranks as the third biggest increase relative to the size of the economy of any US presidential administration. And unlike George W. Bush and Abraham Lincoln, who oversaw larger relative increases in the deficits, Trump did not have to pay for a civil war. In a 2015 assessment, the International Monetary Fund rubbished trickle-down economics and said governments should instead focus on policies that would directly help those on low and middle incomes. It found that increasing the income share actually increases growth, while a rising income share of the top 20% resulted in lower growth. That is, when the rich get richer, benefits do not trickle down. This suggests that policy should focus on raising the income share of the poor and ensuring there is no hollowing out of the middle class. So, when Trump tells you it'll be good for the economy, that doesn't know about Project 2025, or that he's never paid a porn star, just remember.
Last time you saw him talking, did you watch his lips? Were they moving? He's lying.